let's just roll the clips and then we will start from there. Because usually I don't know how to. I don't have an introduction. I do, but this time it's in English. So.
What is your introduction usually? But start it with Mandarin.
No. I'm starting in Dutch.
Okay.
Usually I say. Leuk dat je kijkt naar een gloednieuwe podcast.
Ik versta Nederlands heel goed hoor. Ik kan maar Nederlands praten.
Yeah? Okay. So are we going to hold this conversation in Dutch or in English?
Oh gosh, no. Let's do it in let's do it in my Dutch is finished for the day. I'm afraid.
Okay.
But I can do a little bit of Dutch, like here and there, but my Dutch is limited, to say the least.
Okay. Maybe it would be fun if you can introduce yourself in Dutch.
Yes, I will.
For
Okay.
my viewers.
Okay, are we gonna start now?
Yeah. We're already starting. So this is gonna be the clip on the internet. So.
Okay. Goedenavond, mijn naam is True. Ik kom uit Zuid-Afrika en leuk om hier te wezen.
Oh, wow.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I can understand that. I think the most people also can understand it. But now it's my turn. I need to introduce myself in English, maybe. No, usually people watch for my content, but nice that you are watching a new video of the podcast. Today I'm here with True, my English teacher, I would say, or a friend or a colleague, I would say.
I think all of the above.
Yeah, and thank you for joining. Thank you for the interview, the interview or the podcast. I'm not sure. I'm a bit nervous actually because it's my first ever podcast in English. I never done it before, so I hope my viewers won't blame me for my for my hesitant English and yeah, that's
Je
it.
Engels is heel goed hoor, heel goed.
Yeah, thank you. But I can always improve, so that's why I'm having lessons from True.
Well, thank you for having me, Calvin. It's lovely to speak to you today.
Yeah.
Well, we speak often, but I think today will be a bit more organized in terms of our content. So it's wonderful to be here.
Yeah. So how was your day today?
My day was good. It was a busy day. Thursdays are always busy, but it was a good day. And yours?
It was also a very busy day actually. I started at the delivery at Sarah home, where we know each other from.
Yes.
But the delivery wasn't that busy, I would say. It was more I need to translate in my head the proper words. We finished earlier than usually.
Yeah.
And Bilo wasn't there, so I was more in charge for the first time. Now, oftentimes I'm more in charge than the other workers, the other flex workers, the freelancers. And yeah, I like the position where I'm at.
I guess maybe just to give a bit of context, we both work at Zara home. Well, sort of.
Sort of. You're more of the team Zara home, and I'm more of a freelancer.
Yeah.
I work for Ideal Concept, and we do cleaning and delivery in the mornings.
So that's where Calvin and I actually met over a discussion of a dog bowl, I think. That was
No. The
was
first
it before?
time.
Yeah.
It was before. It was the first time I met you was during my cleaning shifts, and then
that's right.
and then you came up to me and you introduced yourself to me. So it was kind of a surprise for me that someone would introduce herself or himself while I was working at a lower job, I would say.
That's just good manners.
Yeah.
And I remember that actually.
Yeah?
I remember
Did you?
that very well. And then the next time I saw you at the delivery. And I was like, oh, you're working here. And I remember that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yes, that's true. We know each other longer than that. Because I remember then one day you came and you wanted to buy the perfect bowl for your oats.
That was way after the whole starting point.
And he wanted to buy something from the pets collection because that was the perfect size. And I convinced him it wasn't a good idea. He can't have his oats from a dog bowl.
I can. No one would know if I bought the one.
But I would.
And the woman.
So and so we started teaching, learning together, and
during that conversation you talked about that you were teaching English, and after that
we have another guest.
Yes. How do I say it? I was intrigued to improving my English.
Yeah. Well, I'm really, really glad that you decided to join. So so Calvin works in the delivery team where they every Monday and Thursdays we get new stock, and then we have to unpack the stock and place in the store, and that's one of my jobs. I teach English as well, but I also do visual merchandising where we place all the items in the store and make it look beautiful and appealing to the customer. And so Calvin is part of the delivery team where they give us all the stock, and then from there we take over. So in a way we are colleagues and on the same team.
Would you consider me as a colleague?
Yes, I do feel like you're part of the team, definitely.
Would you also consider the other freelancers or flex workers as part of the team?
That's a very good question, actually. I think there are people who we've got to know. So yes, there are certain, like maybe a few that we see often. Although I have to say, you're probably the one that we know the best. So that is a very...
that's maybe also... The reasoning is also maybe because I'm also interested in your team and in every team. Like Bershka and Stradivarius, I also know a lot of people, and it's just fun to communicate with the people around there.
I think it's very easy to stay, I almost want to say anonymous, but I think, for example, you reached out, we had a conversation, and now we know each other. I think Jason maybe is the other person we feel to be part of the team. I don't know if you know Loki.
I know Loki.
Loki is also, I feel, part of the team because we see him often. It's the same face. We say, hello, how are you doing? How was your day? You know, I knew when he went back home. So I think it's just that kind of that personal interaction, which I think is so important to build relationships. But I also think just for overall happiness. I read this really interesting study a while back, and please do not quote me on this because it's a while back, but I think it was a study that was done in America shortly after the Second World War, and they were looking at university graduates, and it's been, I think, almost like a 60 or 80-year study. And so initially it was only male students that they did this study with, and they were looking at the overall I don't know what's the word, signifier for happiness, or the signifier is probably not the right word, but what constitutes happiness, and it wasn't only like short term, but like a life that's meaningful and happy. And after a while, they also included their wives, because these men went on to marry and then had children, and they're now quite old. So what they realized was the biggest determining factor for happiness is the relationships you have the friendships you have, the relationship with your partner, the relationship with your children, the relationship with
Family.
family and friends.
Oh.
But what they've also realized, and this they call micro, I think it's called micro relationships, or micro connection. And that is what you have every day with the person who helps you at the cashier, or the...
But it's also how you view it yourself, right? The relationship with people. Like for some parts, if I think of an example, like my father, he always has issues with people, but he also, in a kind of way, manifested it by himself. Like every small thing seems a huge problem for him. So maybe it's also the point of view of the people.
My mother is one of the nicest people I know. And she has this thing that she always says, and it's, a stranger is just a friend you do not know. This is the cat in the background. We have a very vocal cat. We promise we're not holding any hostages here. It's the cat. He's Siamese.
Yeah.
So, and my husband kind of laughs about it because it's such a like silly thing. A stranger is just a friend you do not know. But I think in many ways it's true. You were a stranger.
Yes.
But you actually ended up just being a friend I didn't know until I introduced myself to you and we became friends. So I think it's how you view the world. But I think very often your view by the world is also shaped by your environment, by your own parents.
Your environment.
Your own environment. And I know my husband is, for example, much more distrustful of strangers than I am. Perhaps by the way he was raised, but also I think maybe experience as well. I mean, we come from South Africa. He's been attacked by strangers once. So, I think it's the way you view the world. What I really want to say is that the way that you view the world is really shaped by many things. And I agree with you with manifesting and attracting a certain energy as well. Because I'm sure it has happened where strangers have been, maybe not as friendly or, maybe I've had bad experiences with strangers, and maybe my mom has had bad experiences with strangers, but it's not what we focus on. We focus on the good experiences. And
that's what I want to say. When I look at you, you only see the brighter side of the things. I don't know. Things.
Well,
yeah.
Maybe we should ask my husband. I'm not always just happy.
Yeah, for sure. But I also talk with Jason sometimes about the colleagues, the people we work with, and you have always a positive mindset and a positive attitude. So actually today he also passed by at Sarah home, and I also passed by, and I saw you guys working, but I didn't think I needed to say hi. I just finished my job, and Jason also got the same feeling, but it is kind of his job. But he told me, like, how do I say it? He didn't want to say hi to you because he was very in a low mood. He was very tired, and he knows that you are very extrovert and very positive. So it would be kind of a badly way to say hi. So that's why he didn't approach that. That's what he told me. But
shame. That's very sweet. But I think it's also sometimes you just peopled out. And I get that. Sometimes you just don't want to greet people because you're peopled out. And I think especially with the kind of jobs we do where we interact a lot with people every day and you have to give a lot of yourself. You're in the service industry very much. So you
Yeah, do you actually prefer working with people or with items? Because I often ask that question around Zara Home, around the colleagues, and sometimes they prefer I like to work at the back office, or how do I say it? More with the items in the back,
like the back
and they would consider hating people. Hating is a big word, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I absolutely love working with people. My first love will always be teaching. I feel it's my calling in life and it's what I really love doing. But I think the context differ because I love teaching. I love working, because it's working with people, but also sharing what you really love. And sharing the knowledge that you have and what you feel passionate about. Zara Home for me was a plan B that ended up becoming a bit more permanent than I thought it would be. I also enjoyed it more than I thought I would. This was really just we arrived in the Netherlands and it was in August and I didn't know what the school terms were like or when it started and when it ended, and we arrived in the middle of the school holidays. And by then I didn't work for 9 months. So because in South Africa the school term ends in December, so I didn't want to upset my students by leaving in the middle of the year. It's just very disruptive. So I for the first 6 months before coming to the Netherlands, I didn't work, and then by August I was really going crazy. I caught myself once telling my husband over dinner in detail what the cat was up to, and I realized then I really need to get something else to keep me busy because I cannot become the kind of person who talks about my cat's day. I mean, that's where I draw the line. So I've always been a big fan of Zara Homes, but from afar because we didn't have Zara Home in South Africa. So I remember when we arrived in Utrecht and I saw that there was a Zara Home. That was one of the first shops I visited, and it was also one of the deciding factors where we're going to live. I told my husband, there's a Zara Home in Utrecht, we're going to have to live here because he works in Hilversum, but it's a bit small. So I was like, no, Zara Home is in Utrecht and it's very beautiful, we're going to have to live here. So I went there a few times to buy things for our new home, and then one day one of the girls told me that there's another South African lady working there, and I was like, well, do you need people? And I thought it was going to be only, until after Christmas, and then they offered me the position of, visual merchandiser, and it became a bit more permanent than I thought it would be. And at this point, I really, really love it. But I'm also glad that I'm teaching again. It was something that really broke my heart because in South Africa, I worked with the kids of asylum seekers, and it was just a job that was extremely rewarding. And I never had a day that I dreaded going to work, and I felt like I did something that really mattered, and I'm not always sure that it matters what I'm doing now. I mean, sure it does. I mean, we helping people to beautify their homes, and
So would you say you feel at home at Zara Home?
I do. I have very good relationships with everybody I work with, including management. Yes.
So would you see yourself at a management position?
No.
Why not? Because teaching is also kind of managing, right? If you're teaching in a class, you got a lot of, how do I say, students that listen to you specifically, and that's kind of also managing people, wouldn't you? Yeah.
I do agree with you, but it's a different kind of managing.
Yeah, that's true.
So when
Yeah, teaching is not the same
yeah,
as managing,
no.
but
Like when you teach, you have the best interest of your students at heart. But when you're a manager for a corporate company, you have to have the best interest of the company at heart. And sometimes you have to make really tough decisions. And it recently happened that we had one of the loveliest people working there. I adored him. He was such a lovely, lovely person. But he was not the best employee. He was just really struggling. And the teacher in me is encouraging and supportive and just loves him so much that I really want him to reach his full potential. And eventually he quit because he realized that this was not the job for him. But if he didn't quit, he probably would have been let go, and that I
so
would
what
never.
was he struggling with? The sales? Because in a company, most often times it's about sales and how much you can
Yes, I
sell.
think also productivity. I think he struggled a bit with ADHD. And so as a teacher, I would make allowances for that and I would support that and I would, encourage and really, help this person out as much as I can. There's just no chance that you would be like, okay, you have to go at some point. You're not really, reaching your full potential. So maybe this is not for you. This would never be an option as a teacher. You would really keep on supporting, because I really do believe if you give people the right support, they flourish. I've seen it over and over and over again. But that is not what is expected in a corporate environment. And that is one of the things that I struggle with most. I love Zara, I love the company. It's not that. I think it's the corporate world, which is just constructed in a different way. And I found my own way in kind of middle ground where I can still have good relationships and I'm on the floor and I can support and, just create a nice environment for the new people entering into the store. Because it can be hard. It's a lot of new things to learn. It's, so yes, I think I do like to be the good cop, I almost want to say.
Okay.
But it is expected of managers sometimes to be the bad cop. They have to make, hard decisions. Because that is their job, and in the end of the day, it is a business. And so the way it's constructed is just very different to what I'm used to. And it's counterintuitive for me. I struggle with that a lot. Like I kind of, when I know that somebody is not doing well, I kind of like, no, but we have to support him, we have to try, he's going to get better. And sometimes it's not the truth, because corporate is not for everybody, and sales is not for everybody. But school is for everybody, and that's why I love it. So yes, I do feel, to come back to your question, I do feel very at home at Zara Home. I have very good relationship with everybody that I work with. I really like the product that we sell as well. I really like the customer interaction most of the time.
I like the new lamp you are selling, the origami lamp.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's quite nice as well. Yeah, and it's a charging lamp.
Yeah,
you don't
yeah,
have
so
to chargeable lamp, so you don't need a battery, which is really nice. So
okay, maybe we shouldn't drift away too far, because I got some questions I wanted to ask. This one is from my last guest. It was actually my sister. And the question actually was in Dutch, welke dingen / wat maakt je weer jong? And the translation was, what things / what makes you young again?
well, that's something that's actually, it's a question that I've been thinking about lately, because I'm turning 40 next year, which feels quite old, but I don't feel 40. I do catch myself sometimes saying things that my mom or dad would have said, like, oh, the music of today or the kids of today, you know, and kind of being irritated by this, you know,
Gen Z.
nonsense. Yes,
Those-
yes. But at the same time, what I wonder about a lot is how do you become a bitter old lady or a bitter old man? Because you see that often. You see embittered people, they're grumpy. There's there's this one man, I walk on the single every day to work. And he's so grumpy, and he's just like, you would greet him and
What's the good definition of grumpy for
like
my
just
English?
unfriendly and unhappy, I would say. Like he just looks irritated and really unhappy in general, and he would kind of like shoot people out of the way, and he's just like, you know, horrible. And you get that often with old people. I see this as, you know, working in Zara Zara as well, where most of the customers that are more difficult and more unfriendly are a bit older. And I'm not sure why it is. I think maybe with age you feel like you have less time for nonsense. Maybe, I'm not sure. But it's not true for everybody. Of course, you get lovely, lovely older people. But I wonder about that, because I've also had moments where I caught myself, you know, being grumpy or being, you know, irritated about nonsense. And I'm not sure 100% what keeps you young, but I think a certain openness. Because you
Openness.
like to be open. Because you can now dismiss all the music of this generation, or you can maybe see if there isn't maybe something that you like. So, funny story. Of course, being a teacher, you're always introduced to the latest fashions and the latest music, so you always know what's going on.
Latest trends.
Yeah, the latest trends, and a lot of them are silly, but you know, a lot of them are also, I think, there's almost this repetition of fashion. You know, what was in a few years ago will come back into fashion now.
Yeah.
So it all looks very familiar sometimes. But so a year ago, Floor, who we work with, she has this playlist that she plays at the deliveries, actually. The deliveries are quite early in the morning, so we listen to music and get the work done. And some of it was really nice, but some of it is also, you know...
Less interesting for you.
yeah, not as pleasing. I can't say that. I mean, she actually has very good taste in music, I have to say that. But so I don't know where it was. I don't know if it was her playlist but I heard this song from Imagine Dragons. And then I heard it again, and I kind of discovered for myself this new band. And so I was talking to somebody, said, oh, you know, I've discovered this really nice new band. It's called Imagine Dragons. It's such cool music. And they said to me, it's not new. It's been around for almost 10 years. So sometimes new to me in the end.
Yeah.
But I think like to be open to...
Accepting new,
yeah.
new things.
Yeah. And also to realize that, you know, you still have a lot to learn. But I'm very lucky because in my life I've had really good mentors when I was younger. So it's also sometimes you have to become a mentor, and you have this new role where you also get to share what you know. But it's like with teaching, it's never a one-way street. You're going to teach, but you're also going to learn. And I think that's how it works in life as well. So I think maybe then
I think you're in the position now, in the mentor position. You're actually mentoring me right now. Sometimes I hear a lot of stories from you and I get inspired, actually. So
Thank you, Calvin. That's very nice. Well, thank you. I must say I still have wonderful mentors. I have a teacher. Well, she was my professor when I was doing my master's degree, and we became very, very good friends. And she's very, very much a mentor in my life still. So I don't think, you ever stop really needing a mentor. But at some point you realize that you maybe have learned a thing or two and that you can share wisdom when it's needed or asked for.
Sometimes it's more difficult for me to find a mentor because I'm actually, how would I say that? I'm following the trend, I'm following the time, and what I would like to do for work is this YouTube, and sometimes it's more difficult to find persons that already experience this that I can learn from, so I need to learn a lot by myself. And sometimes I find it quite difficult and also lonely. But it is part of the journey, and at the end I'm not alone because I share my experiences with my viewers, with my friends. But it's just different. And yeah, we also spoke about that I'm walking the less walked roads.
The path less traveled.
Yeah, the path
or the road less traveled.
So it's different, but also maybe fun and interesting for people to watch.
Well, I think sometimes, especially with what you're explaining now, it's a more authentic experience, where it is you finding your way. And I think people relate to that, where it's authentic. You get these very, very kind of polished, organized, YouTube channels, which are really, lovely, I guess. But I think there's something about authenticity that cannot be replicated. I mean, I guess that's why they call it authentic. But I don't know, it's just endearing and lovely. So, but yes, finding your own way, especially in a field that's not often, traded in, is difficult. I actually thought of you yesterday because I have this poetry book. It's like poem for every day of the year.
Oh.
And so part of my morning routine is I make a cup of coffee and I have this chair next to the window in my kitchen. And
Is it in English?
It is in English.
Okay.
And I read a poem every morning.
Oh, cool.
And The Road Less Traveled was actually my poem for yesterday. Oh. And it was just like, so by pure chance. The 25th of September.
What's the name of the book?
I think a poem of... I can go get it if you like me to. Shall I quickly get it?
No, actually, I got something for you because it's also a book with poems. It's actually a gift, but it's in Dutch, so I'm not sure if it's this one.
No, it's not. It's
okay,
not.
then it's perfect. This is also a poem. It's from a Korean writer. But it's
show our... You're going to have to read the name of it because
Dingen die je alleen ziet als je er tijd voor neemt.
Oh, I've actually seen this book. It's things you see when you take the time for it. Thank you so much. This is a lovely, lovely, lovely gift.
Yeah, so you can
it's
practice
a poetry book. Now I can read...
you can learn some Dutch.
Oh, that is wonderful. and look at the beautiful illustrations. You just have to... Korea is actually, I don't know if I've told you, but it's a country, well, South Korea, that's very, look at this little origami bird. I don't know if they can see it here.
I don't know, maybe some
Isn't
people.
It beautiful? Thank you so much. There is really no better gift in the world
than a book.
Yeah. I'm going to enjoy this, and now I'm going to have this as part of my morning routine. This is beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
I thought of a gift because how do I say that? The
Nederlands?
friendliness of you accepting me in your home. No. How do I say it in English?
It's good, it's good.
No, it's not. It's good, but not
Like
the
being
right way.
welcoming, you mean?
Yeah. So in our culture, it's more common to don't come empty-handed,
Ah.
and
This is
that's why
now our
that's-
Hong Kong culture or Dutch culture.
No. It's more Chinese, Hong
Okay.
Kong culture, I think. But usually we bring fruit, but this time I couldn't find the mangoes I was looking for, so I brought Hong Kong milk tea. But this was
And a
more
book.
personal.
And a book.
And a
There's really no better gift than a book. I really love books with all my heart. It's like my favorite thing. So I'm going to really enjoy this. Thank you. And especially by the Korean author.
Yeah,
Because I lived in Korea for a year.
yeah, it's
And it was such a wonderful experience. And it's a very interesting book because I think it's so like different to Korean culture almost, because Korean culture is very fast paced. The people work incredibly hard. There's not a lot of time to really go be still and to take things in. So I
that's
think
maybe why that's the name of
Yeah.
the title. Oh,
there's a lot of pressure on I think
Korean.
most Korean people to perform. I mean, the education system there
yeah,
is very severe. I don't know if I would ever put my child in a Korean school, just because it's very, very fast paced, and I
So
feel
you-
almost unforgiving.
so you would say you don't like the Korean education as a teacher?
When
Too much pressure?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had this. So my job, I went as a volunteer in a very impoverished part of Busan. But then I'm saying impoverished, but it's really, compared to impoverished in South Africa, it's a very different ball game altogether. And it was kids who couldn't afford after school care, like after school classes, because they have what they call hog-1. So they have class from, I think, 8 until 2 or 8 until 4, I'm not sure. And then they have after school classes or hog-1 in math, science, and English. So most of these kids at the age of 9, 10, 11 only get home at 10 or 12 at night. Okay, maybe not 12, but like 9 or 10 at night. And they were then in school from 8 and then had their after school classes. And some of them do taekwondo or dance or whatever. But most of it is very academic. And if your parents can't afford these after school classes, then you fall behind. So I ended up working with kids. It was like a volunteer program that the government actually funded. So the government funded this volunteer program for these kids. It was called EPIC, or mine was actually called Talk, but it was part of the EPIC program. And it was wonderful. But I remember one day I said something. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something about, like playing outside. Like, in South Africa, I don't know, I see this in the Netherlands as well, but in South Africa, where I came from, there are parks with swings and grass and, maybe like a slide.
Yeah.
And I said something about it, and that they should maybe do something because what they do for fun is they play computer games. And I made a comment about, no, maybe you should play outside rather. I can't remember exactly because this is now a good, 15 years ago.
So
But the one kid looked at me and said, this is not America. We don't have that here. We don't have like little outside playing areas. And I'm sure they are. I'm almost want to say I've seen it, but it's not a very common thing for kids to play outside. And that breaks my heart, because I do think it's important to have a good education. But I also think that learning is something that happens almost inevitably if kids have fun and if they're in a stimulating environment. I'm not sure how stimulating it is to sit in a class from 9 to 9. That being said, I'm a great admirer of Korean culture and how the country
Operate.
how the country operates. I mean, compared to a country like mine, South Africa, where things are a bit, chaotic and, so it's difficult because I don't want to be critical of
So how
a
would
country
you
I love.
compare it to the Netherlands?
I think the Netherlands is a very nice middle ground. But also, the Netherlands is known for the country with the happiest kids. So that says a
Isn't
lot.
that Sweden or Denmark?
I think it's the Netherlands. I've heard from
Really?
so many of my friends that the Netherlands is the perfect place to have children. If you're going to have kids, have them in the Netherlands because they are so happy here.
I don't think my viewers would agree with that, but maybe it's
I don't think most people know what they have
yeah, that's true.
really until they don't have it
don't
or
don't
actually
know what
see.
they have,
Yeah, they don't know what they have until they see
what they have.
what they have. And I think in other parts of the world, things are a bit different. I just think about the way parents speak to their children here. Very often in Zara, when a child has a little meltdown because they've been in the shop for too long and they're tired, you see the parents bending down and speaking to the child nicely. Whereas in South Africa, very often the child will be treated roughly, be like, no, 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 behave, and maybe like pushed or, sometimes even hit.
Yeah, I think that's also Asian culture.
Yeah.
Like because you are in a public area,
Yeah.
you need to be normal or behave around other people. I don't know. Yeah, how it is with the Dutch.
I think it's much different. Or very different. Much different. Very different. Just, I once had a conversation with a mom, and this was so enlightening to me, where she said she was speaking so nicely to a child. And I said to her afterwards, I really admire the way you're raising your daughter and just the way you speak to her. And she said, yes, but you have to understand that she has to get used to, being in public spaces, but also she's knee high. So everything she sees is under the table. We see everything at our eye level because that's how the shop is constructed. But this child, or I think most children really, see the parts that we don't see. It's like under the table, on the floor, the lowest shelves. And it's not really very stimulating for them. And they get bored. And because they don't have the emotional maturity really to say, Mom, I'm bored. Can we do something else? They will complain, and their parents will be like, no, we're almost done. And then eventually they get frustrated and they have meltdowns, because that is what happened when you're 3 years old and you haven't developed the communication skills to really communicate properly. And I think that for me was very, very good parenting, because it's not seeing the child as the problem, it's seeing the problem. The problem is that the child is understimulated, maybe a little bit tired, bored, and that's why she's behaving that way. She's not being a little brat, she's not being naughty, she's being 3. And I love that. I love that kind of insight into your child's behavior. I think if most parents did that, the world would be a much better place. But I do see this more often in the Netherlands than I see in South Africa or in other countries that I've lived in.
So wouldn't you also say that the Dutch children are getting treated too nicely? Like sometimes, if you say it in Dutch, you need to get a corrigerende tik. Like you need to be corrected in some way?
Yes, I do agree that children should be guided, but I'm going to do a little bit of a backstory.
Okay.
So in South Africa, 350 people get killed every week. Of the 350, one is a South African farmer, 50 are women, there are a few children, and then the 280, 290 other people that are getting killed are all men. And this we found out because a while back a girl got killed in a post office in South Africa, and there was a big uproar about this and a lot of protests against gender-based violence. And my husband and I had this conversation about, what is at the root of the problem. Because South Africa is a very, very violent society. We are known as the rape capital of the world. But we have a lot of people getting killed every week. It's there's a lot of violent crime. My husband got stabbed in the face once on his way to go buy bread and milk, and somebody wanted to rob him from his wallet. My father got killed in armed robbery, so it's a very violent country. And so we had this conversation about what is at the root of this. And I mean, I'm not an expert, and I haven't done research about this, but one thing that I know, and this is not a cultural thing, I think, from different cultures in South Africa, because we've got many different cultures, this is something that's almost, I want to say, South African, is that the boys in our country are very often I just want to say manhandled. They're treated very roughly. There's this idea about masculinity. You have to be tough, you have to be a man. So it's not uncommon to hit your child, or to push, or being rough with your child. And the problem with hitting your child is that you're using violence, because hitting a child is an act of violence. Hitting a dog or a person, it's violence. I mean, if you as an adult hit another adult, it's assault. You can actually end up in jail with a lawsuit. But yet it is very acceptable in our country to hit a child, and recently it became illegal to do so. I mean, obviously it still happens at home, but men, and this is not only in black communities, this is in the white homes that my husband and I both grew up in. So it's not about, privilege and wealth and poverty, and it happens just everywhere in South Africa. But the problem is using violence to solve a problem with your child. The message you're giving is really that if you want to solve problems, you use violence. And this is the kind of message that's been sent in South Africa all the time. It's a message that came with apartheid, Problems were solved with violence. When there was peaceful protest, it was a waste of time. The one person that tried to do a peaceful protest that was very inspired by Martin Luther King got thrown out of the 12th window of a building in South Africa. So peaceful protest never worked in South Africa. It was only when violence came in the picture that problems got solved. But where do you draw the line then? Because if you teach a child that they should use violence to solve problems, that you can't expect them to not then do it when they're grown up. And that is what happens in South Africa. Problems are getting solved by violence, and that's how you have gender-based violence and child abuse. And what is really interesting for me I've been in the Netherlands now for 2.5 years, is how the Dutch are almost ignorant to violence. Violence is not something that really exists here. People don't hurt each other. People are not aggressive. They don't scream at each other when they're on bicycles or on cars. You know, it's just a very peaceful country because people here were not raised with violence. So that is my theory, at least, is that
Your point
people,
of view,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, the people here are not familiar with violence and therefore they don't use it. And I agree with you that kids should be corrected, but I think, and
In
this
a
is what I
different
truly
way,
believe.
like how would you consider correcting if it's not a bit of violence, like just a small bit? Because violence is also, I would see it as power. How I view it is, if you use violence, you create power, you create a different dynamic, like the parents is in charge of the children, and you need to respect the elderly people. So that's how I see it in my culture. Like, for example, yeah, my past, I also got hit, I would say, but I wouldn't say it was hard on me. It was just, I was being naughty. And yeah, sometimes it's also, how do I say it? You're trying to be the powerhouse at home, and you also want to give off fear to the children. If you do something wrong, that inflicts fear at children, and then he or she will knows from, oh, I shouldn't do this because it's not good. That's what fear creates, because if you are afraid of something, you wouldn't do it that often, you know.
Well, it's very interesting that you mentioned that because I have two things that I
Yeah.
want to say about this. But they have found that kids that get hit, they are not better behaved. They are just better at lying.
At lying.
At lying. So they don't. It's not true, of course, for all the kids, but I guess especially kids in abusive homes, where they are better at hiding things. And then if they are asked, "Did you do this?" they would say no because they have a fear of punishment.
Okay.
So whereas if you have a child, let's say for example, a kid broke a cup.
Yeah.
The kid who broke the cup would be honest and say, yes, I did, I'm so sorry, because they know that they're not going to get hurt for being honest. A kid who gets hit usually will not be honest. So, I mean, kids who
He or
get
she will
hit,
hide it.
yeah, they'll hide it. So kids who are beaten are not better behaved than kids who are not beaten. In actual fact, they might be worse behaved because they will maybe then be more aggressive at school because of this pent-up frustration. But the question I actually have to ask you is then, do you think that fear equals respect?
That's a good question. In one sort of way, it is, because I also attended Taekwondo, and you always got one teacher or one person. I'm speaking for martial arts, and you need to respect the most advanced person in the sport, so you're also the most afraid of him, you would say. That's in martial arts. Like, if you are the strongest, most people are afraid of you because they consider you as the strongest. So it's also a kind of way of respect, that I won't attack that person because I know his capability. I know he can beat me up if I attack him, or even if I fight him with more people, he still can win. Then I would say, yeah, I won't attack him, and I would respect that person and don't bother him.
Okay, I've never done martial arts.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah,
I don't know, but I
so
hear-
that's
yeah, I
that's
hear what
maybe
you're
the
saying.
Asian culture. Like for example, I was mentioning Taekwondo, that's Korean. You also got Kung Fu or all the other martial arts, like, I don't know, Thai boxing. All the martial arts are more from Asia, I see. And that's also where you earn the respect, because if you win, you win. And then you are the strongest and the most respectful one. So that's also maybe a point of view of my side of the story, but yeah, your side is also, of course, a true part. But it's different.
See, from my experience, really, as a teacher, I've never had problem with discipline. And I've been teaching, I have in the past taught at really difficult schools or in difficult classrooms. I mean, where there's a lot of racial tension. And I've never, I would also never, but I've never felt the need to raise my hand to a child, because what I've learned is that if you build good relationships with your children, and it will take time, but if you build good relationships, and if you, at times where it's really difficult, just remember that you are the adult, and that you have 20, maybe 30 years experience, in comparison to maybe 10 or 15 years that they're old, and that you have a certain emotional maturity, and that you cannot get upset with, little snotty remarks, or that almost like bad behavior is a good opportunity to have important conversations. That you will not have problems with discipline. I've never, ever had problems with discipline, because I really feel like the answer there is good relationships. And if you have good relationships, and you're honest, you will not have problems with behavior. But also, if you see that there is a problem with bad behavior, you have to look deeper and say, okay, why is this child acting that way? Because bad behavior has a root cause always.
That's true.
Most of the time, it's because of other bad adults or badly behaved adults. So, I that is but I mean, I don't have children of my own. I have a cat that's very well behaved. So, so I can't speak for parents, and I think I really, really, I really admire people who are happy to do it 24/7. I mean, I do it for, from 8 to 4, and I get paid for it, and I can come home and, I have a little bit of a breather. I think for many parents, it's 24/7, especially in the early years. So that's hard, and I think you're going to get frustrated and angry, and and it's nice for me to sit here and say, you have to always stay in control and be the parent. I think it's very, very difficult when you're in the thick of it. So, but I just think that the proof is in the pudding, I almost want to say, where in the Netherlands, it's so safe. For me, one of the biggest privileges of living here, and I will never, never get over this, is being able to walk back home after work. I can walk for 15 minutes and not feel afraid for 1 second. I mean, the only thing I've ever felt afraid of walking back from work was a dog one day that ran up to me. It was a really big dog, and I had a fright. That was the only thing that scared me. If you can say the only thing that you're afraid of in a country is the dog or the dogs, you're very lucky, because this is not the truth for many, many countries.
It's, I think, a different side of the story. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's fun. It's fun to hear the different side of a conversation, and that's why I talk with a lot of people, because if you would say, yeah, I'm not sure because you are also foreign, but if I'm speaking with my foreign friends and where we came from or where we live, like Overvecht and Kanaaleiland, we wouldn't consider that as safe, and the most Dutch people also wouldn't consider that as safe. But I get what you mean, and so yeah, that's just the truth. How you see the point of view, how you see the world.
I can tell you, Kanaaleiland is safer than the safest part of South Africa. That is definitely so.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, but it is interesting, and I think that is what makes living in another country so wonderful, is that you experience new ways of doing things. You learn. It was really difficult for me in the beginning is to learn the rules of a country. You know, like what is seen as socially acceptable, what is seen as maybe not that socially acceptable.
Isn't it funny that how would I say, the differentiations, this difference between people is divided by comparing with each other, but that's also what you are doing right now with your own country, because you are comparing your previous life in South Africa and you're comparing it to here. But comparing is also the thing that would divide people.
Well, yes, yeah. I guess it can.
If I'm asking it properly.
No, I hear what you mean. It's like comparison.
It's
kind
not
of creates
good.
Divide, yes, because you like, oh, the one is better than the other.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that can be, but I think for me it is really what we've done, because in the past 10 years, my husband and I have been we've lived in South Korea, Vietnam, South Africa, and the Netherlands. And what is really wonderful is to take from each country, you know, and to see what really works and what doesn't, you know. And there's a lot of stuff that I've kind of, even if I had to go back to South Africa, I wouldn't do anymore. It would just seem silly, even though, like, silly example, but taking your shoes off when you go into your own home or somebody else's home, that is not a South African thing at all. And it's something that we've learned when we lived in Vietnam, Korea as well, where you take your shoes off, because it just doesn't make sense to walk with shoes outside and then to trample all that germs into your own home, you know. So it's something that we loved and we started doing. And when we moved back to Cape Town, because that's where we lived for the past 3 years before we moved back to to the Netherlands, we just took our shoes off. And when people came to visit us, they didn't even think of taking their shoes off, you know. And when my mom came to visit now, she would put her shoes on and then walk around in the house and then go out. And I mean, of course, I just kind of left it. But there was this part of me that thought to myself, Mom, you know, it just makes the cleaning so much easier if you don't walk around with shoes in the home. So it's silly things like that where, I mean, you can focus on the negative things, but you can also learn from each culture. And that's something that my husband and I often do when we go to a new country. We visit, maybe it's for a week and maybe it's for 2 weeks. Usually it's better if you were there a bit longer, but we would really ask each other, what did we learn from this culture or this experience? And sometimes it is a new dish that we will then try to make here, or you know, maybe it's a way of interacting. Maybe it's something that we realize, okay, we don't want to, you know, do it like that here in our lives, you know. So I think it's so important to once again be open to learn from other cultures. And you can focus on the negative things and the things that divide us, but you can also compare and say, okay, you know, maybe taking your shoes off makes more sense. Even though it's not something that is like a custom in South Africa, we do it even if we live there because it's just I think, practical and it makes sense. And
Mm-hmm.
for me now, it's good manners. But for most South Africans, it wouldn't be,
Yeah.
For those living in the Netherlands, absolutely. They would agree because they know how it feels to clean your own house. In South Africa, we have a lot of domestic help. So maybe that's why people don't really think about it, because they don't clean their own homes, So yeah.
Okay, cool. I think I got some last questions
Okay.
for you as a teacher. It's more of a this or that.
Mm-hmm.
Would you prefer teaching in front of a class or in person, one-on-one?
Gosh, can I say both?
No, you need to pick one.
I think a year ago, I would have said 100% a classroom, because I love the energy of schools and classrooms and, that kind of interaction and community. And I was actually very, very opposed to online teaching. I never wanted to do it. But I've been, it's very difficult to get into the school system in the Netherlands if you cannot speak Dutch fluently. So I've actually realized that I do like one-on-one teaching, and online teaching isn't bad either, because I have a really lovely Dutch online teacher. I have my Dutch classes are online, and that's been really fun. So both. But if I have to really, really choose, please don't make me choose.
Okay, next question then. Would you prefer teaching boys or girls?
Oh gosh.
I need to check the time. Yeah.
That's really hard, because I've always enjoyed teaching boys, because they're funny and you laugh a lot, and girls are very cute and they always write you little cards. But some of my happiest memories, or the funniest memories I have, are from teaching boys, and the stuff they would say and come up with. And I had this one I was teaching grade 6 at the last school in South Africa, and there was one day one of my students put up his hand and said, teacher, Afika is talking about your body. And I was like, oh, and what did Afika say? And so Afika said, no, ma'am, I just said you're losing weight. And I was like, oh, wow, thank you. And then one of my other students, because they're from different parts of Africa, and it's also the context, one of my very serious students, his name was Shama, he looked at me very seriously. Losing weight can be a sign of HIV/AIDS. And it's true. I mean, in that, we live in South Africa, they have, they have a lot of HIV/AIDS there. But it was just, at that moment, it was so sincere, but it was just so funny. And so I laugh a lot. I mean, I just enjoy boys, especially that age. And they're challenging. I think that as a teacher, boys challenge you sometimes a little bit more than girls as well. Even the older grades, so when I taught high school, they're a little bit more, especially you being then I'm not so young anymore, but when I was a young teacher, they would kind of challenge me, and you kind of have to work for their trust and their respect. But I do enjoy girls as well, because you get a lot of beautiful little cards and drawings, and they just love you so much. So both.
Okay. Yeah, I think those were the questions I wanted to ask. Oh yeah, one more question. You need to think of a question you want to ask the next guest on my podcast. You can.
Do you know who your next guest is going to be?
No. Maybe, not sure, but depends. I'm never sure who it will be, so that's the fun part, because you can ask the question, the next person we will talk about that question.
There is a question that I like to ask people, and I think it's such an interesting question. And whenever I see, older couples that have been together for a really long time, I like to ask them what they would say is the secret to not a marriage necessarily, but what is the secret to having a happy relationship? I'm always so intrigued
Relationship, okay.
and interested in people's answers. And I know, of course,
Okay.
there's just no one right answer,
No, of course.
but I love the answers I get. It's really
Okay.
interesting. So
So,
my question would be, what is the secret to a happy, lasting relationship?
what's the secret to a happy, lasting relationship? Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for the lovely conversation.
Oh, thank you, Calvin. This was so
It was
enjoyable.
a pleasure that you were on on this podcast with me.
It was lovely, and
It was
thank
yeah,
you.
we had a nice conversation, and hopefully the viewers also find it interesting to listen to. And yeah, I will. How do I say it? Ik ga het afsluiten in het Nederlands.
Ja, sluit af in Nederlands.
Oké,
Dat is heel goed.
is
Ik
goed.
verstaan heel mooi.
Oké. Bedankt voor het kijken, bedankt voor het luisteren naar de podcast. Vergeet niet te liken, te commenten en te subscriben. En laat in de comments ook weten wie jij als gast wilt zien. En dan kan ik hem of haar inviten. Dat was het.
Dankjewel.
Yes.
Tot ziens. Fijne dag.
Bye bye.